Hi, welcome back to Storytime with Dave Booker. Today we're going to continue on with Sheriff in a Small Town. We're getting towards the end. So let's see, we got Lost and Found to do next. Okay, so let's begin. Rocky was cleaning the courthouse. Talbot had taken the squad car to do his rounds. Agnes was keeping Rocky company. She was insisting on making the jail cells more comfortable. Rocky had already tried to explain that he didn't want people to feel comfortable in the cells, but she was insistent that just because a person was incarcerated did not mean you weren't still a person. Anyways, very few people use the cells anymore, and those that did were for a misdemeanor and nothing major. Rocky allowed a few decorative pillows, but nothing else. She objected until he explained the possible consequences of some of her other items. Rocky turned the mobile radio up higher. If Talbot called in, he wanted to be sure he could hear it. Moving into the back, he cleaned under the cot, space often overlooked, and dusted the shelves. A squelch came from the radio, caught his attention. Talbot to Rocky, come in. Rocky rushed in and grabbed the mic. Reading you loud and clear, go ahead. Copy, I'm at the lake with Miss Lewis. She has a class of 24 here, and one is missing, Theo Waters by name. I've done a scout around with no luck. Okay, Roger, so far. Which lake and do you need assistance? Affirmative. Get over here to the fishing lake. Copy. Heading out now. We'll meet you at 5. Location at 5 or better. Copy. Over and out. Rocky put in a call to the state patrol, placing them on standby. Agnes heard and had the truck warmed up. With a portable police light suction cup to the top, the siren blaring, Rocky tore off. Arriving at the lake, Talbot showed him what they were up against. Agnes stayed with the children while Miss Lewis agitatedly showed Rocky where they had been before she had noticed Theo was missing. We were all over here by this opening looking at the animal tracks. I was explaining how you could tell what animals were around by looking at the prints. In the little patch, she had placed markers with pictures of the animals the prints were from. Nearby was a metal ring and a box of plaster for making molds. Did you notice Theo doing anything particular? Oh yes, he was over here picking up feathers. She pointed to an area where a few feathers still remained. His footprints were the only ones visible. Miss Lewis took the rest of the class back to school. When she returned, she was in tears. It had been necessary to call Theo's parents and let them know the situation. They were on the way, and for obvious reasons, they were not happy. Rocky had the field glasses on, was up the tree, overlooking as much as possible. It seemed almost impossible that the child wasn't visible. He was about to look around the area again to see if he could see any more prints. Talbot shook his head. It's all grass and leaves from here back. Rocky had seen all there was to see and realized the search party was probably the best step. He needed a group of people quick, though, and he knew just about where to find them. The hobo camp usually held about 15 people at a time. That would be sufficient for the moment in an area this size. He had Talbot do a walk into the woods as far as possible, using a zigzag approach to cover a wider area. Running to the truck, he tore off, sending rocks and pebbles flying, hoping his hobo friends were at a residence. Hearing sirens and the truck going hell for leather, the hobos were all waiting to find out what the problem was. Rocky explained quickly, and the truck was filled with people in the cab and in the back. They were at the lake in less than the 10 minutes Rocky had figured on. Talbot returned when he had heard the siren. He had the hobo army spread out and starting their walk and search. So short a time in getting a search party organized, Rocky felt fairly certain that beg your pardon, I'm having a good time. Rocky felt, with so short a time in getting a search party organized, Rocky felt fairly confident in a quick search and find. And I'm going to get my tea. Hold on a second. Okay. I can't do anything about my tea. Oh, much better. With Talbot officiating the search, Rocky contacted the state police, letting them know the current situation. He requested search dogs if they were available. He was informed they were out and that the alternates were 2.5 hours away. They would be notified and sent ASAP. The offer of a small aircraft was changed to a helicopter that would cover a wider area fast with better visibility. Rocky contacted Theo's parents and brought them to the site. We called in the state police and they're standing by if needed, and a chopper is in the air now for an overhead view that will cover as much area as possible. The cries of Theo were becoming fainter as the search party moved deeper. Overhead, the sound of a propeller announced the arrival of their overhead search team. Theo's parents were understandably distressed and began to criticize Miss Lewis bringing such a large group with only one person. Miss Lewis explained that she had asked the principal to allow volunteers to help, but the request had not been well received. Wilder was surprised. Wait a minute, the board had already insisted that volunteers should be used. Rocky brought the parents to the squad car to maintain control. Miss Lewis was having a hard time keeping herself together. On the back of the trunk, Rocky laid out a map of the area and was working out a search grid. Theo's father claimed an intimate knowledge of the forest area as well as knowing his son. He requested to be allowed to make a search on his own. Rocky gave him a spare brick and let him do his best. It might help and at least gave the man something constructive to do. His wife went along, calling as she went. Miss Lewis was telling Rocky everything she knew about Theo as he was marking out areas already searched. He's such an unusual child, and he's such an animal lover. Birds are his favorite, especially hawks. She laughed a little. He was so excited about today's excursion that he couldn't sleep at nap time. He sat there on his mat, wrapped up in his blanket, and chirped. Rocky looked up from his map. Wait a minute, he was gathering feathers, he said? She nodded. And he didn't take a nap? She shook her head. Well, when he naps, does he always wrap up like that? She smiled and nodded. He likes to make a nest to lay in. She shook her head in wonder at the strange things her children did. Rocky to Talbot, come in. Talbot, go ahead. Theo may be tired by now. I'm told if he is, he'd be sort of nesting. Nesting? Talbot's voice showed he wasn't sure he had heard Rocky correctly. Affirmative. He likes to pretend he's a bird. Talbot called out to check low for a small area that might resemble a nest and to look for any feathers also, as he had been carrying a large quantity of them. Turning to Miss Lewis, he asked another question. When he does nap, is he hard to wake up? Again, the smile. He's the hardest of them all. When he sleeps, he's sometimes so hard to wake up, I just leave him in a corner. A couple of hours later, he usually gets up on his own. She stood dumbfounded, looking around helplessly. She finally collapsed onto the ground, crying. Agnes comforted her as best she could. It was unfortunate, though not unexpected, that the school principal decided to pay a call. He was an officious individual who tried to take charge immediately upon arrival. Okay, where is everyone? Sheriff, you should have a large group here looking for this child. It's been over an hour and you're still setting up your control center? This won't do. I'll have to take it from here. He pulled the map off the trunk and began Xing off areas to send people to. Rocky claimed the map and pen and explained the current situation. Sir, we already have a search party organized and they are searching at this moment. We have a helicopter in the air, as you can hear. We have requested canine units, but they're over 2 hours away still. The man held up his hand. Hand me your walkie-talkie. I want to bring everybody back so I can send them out more efficiently. Had you done this correctly at the start, the child would have been found by now. Rocky put his hand on his brick. Sir, I am not calling back everyone just so you can play big shot. We'd probably be going over areas already covered and wasting time if these marks you put on my map are any indication. I understand your concern, but let me do my job and bring this child home. Rocky checked in with the helicopter and received a negative answer. Nothing so far. He checked with Theo's father. Again, negative. Rocky was trying to work out anything else they could do to increase their chances. Looking again for footprints wasn't going to help. Kids had been everywhere. There was no play equipment for him to hide in. Playground was at the smaller lake, and the location was surrounded by cottages. The forested area was sparse enough, though, that they should be able to see him. Rocky was beginning to think something was missing in the way they were handling things. Hold on. He realized, that they smell this tea, but maybe I need something stronger. He realized they needed more professional help and fast. It would be getting darker, and with darkness, a chill would set in. They wanted someone with the knowledge and skill to find the child faster than they were doing. He looked over to find Agnes. She had Miss Lewis in the truck. They say when two souls are connected, they can feel each other's look in their direction. She looked up at the same time as Rocky looked over. They also say the great minds think alike, and Agnes knew what she had to do. She rushed off home for Tucker. Returning soon, Tucker was excited and expected to play again. Principal scoffed when he saw Tucker jumping and barking. Agnes led him to this area where the children had been grouped for at the last time Theo had been seen. Rocky and Tucker smelled Theo's coat. Rocky had been training Tucker for police work from a manual he had found. Well, it was time to see if the training would pay dividends. Tucker smelt the coat and smelt the ground back and forth in front of the wooded area. He made a few advances, but wouldn't go far into the wooded area. Agnes tried to lead him in, but the dog stayed stubbornly where he was and wanted to head over towards Rocky. Agnes was getting frustrated and felt Tucker hadn't been trained enough to be of use. It might be a long while, but they would have to wait for the federal agents and their K-9 units. She led Tucker towards the car. The principal was barking at Rocky again. "We have a serious situation here, Sheriff, and you bring us out an untrained, half-witted dog to this search. Total waste of time, and you should be ashamed of yourself. If you'd listened to me, we would have this wrapped up immediately. Still say bring the people back, and let's restart this the right way." Halfway to the car, Tucker pulled at his leash. Agnes was sternly telling him they were going. Pulling harder, he pulled the leash out of her hands and went running into the weeds, barking loudly. Just at the edge was a deer nest. Its sides were high, and the grass in the center was flattened. Asleep in the center was Theo. It looked as if he had collected more feathers than they had thought. He was almost covered in them. Tucker's barking and licking woke him up. Theo was astonished at all the commotion around him. Miss Lewis was in tears, hugging him. Rocky called in the search party and notified the helicopter and the federal agency if the child had been found. Theo's parents came in a run and thanked Rocky and everyone for finding Theo. With a full audience at left, the principal laid into Miss Lewis on her carelessness in allowing this to happen. He berated her on her lack of attention and threatened her with child endangerment. Theo's father handed the boy over to his wife and approached the principal. "Mr. Backscheider, you should recognize me since I'm president of the school board. I seem to recall we told you one teacher on a field trip wasn't enough, and that volunteers should be utilized for added security. I seem to recall you said it wasn't necessary and that you didn't want untrained people watching over the students. We disagreed and instructed you to add volunteer requests to the paperwork sent out for field trip notices." His wife pulled one out of her purse and flourished it in the principal's face. "Nothing but volunteers have been added. Considering what has happened and your continual ignoring of the board's instructions, feel we have to consider that." He took a deep breath and barked furiously into the principal's face. "You are fired." Principal slunk away, a beaten man. Rocky gathered the hobos together and treated them to a big dinner at the diner before taking them back to camp. The next day, Miss Lewis asked Rocky if he could bring the hobos and Tucker to the school auditorium. The hobos were a bit confused as to why they were being picked up. Fortunately, all the hobos that had helped the day before were there, and together with Tucker, they arrived and stayed at the school. Miss Lewis had them all stand on stage. She explained who these men and women were and that they traveled the country looking for work, never staying long in one place and always ready to tackle any opportunity. These people, as soon as they heard about a lost child, had immediately volunteered to help. I think we owe them a show of thanks. The cheering was thunderous, and the hobos were all standing there red-faced, but proud they could help. Agnes led out Tucker as Miss Lewis continued. And a special thanks for our furry friend who found Theo. The auditorium erupted in cheers again. Miss Lewis then said the words everyone was waiting for. Now, if everyone will follow me to the lunchroom, we'll have some coffee and ice cream. So that's it for today. We're getting, as I said, down towards the end. We've got a few more chapters to go. We'll get there eventually. Thank you for being here. Thank you for visiting and joining me for Storytime with David Booker. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care of yourselves. Be good. Be good to yourself. Bye. And I got to figure out how to do this.